Hello, and welcome to our presentation, Finding a Balance for Success, Student Success Innovations versus Faculty Workload Concerns. We are from Kennesaw State University in the Atlanta metro area in Atlanta, Georgia in the US, and we are from the Radau College of Humanities and Social Sciences in the Office of Digital Education. I'd like to introduce to you our presenters for today. I'm Dr. Tamara Powell. I'm a professor of English at KSU and director of the RCHSS Office of Digital Education. Dr. Julie R. Newell is a professor of interdisciplinary studies at KSU and a special assistant to the provost. Mr. Stephen Bartlett is a lecturer of history at KSU and associate director of the RCHSS Office of Digital Education. Mr. Sam Lee is the RCHSS ODE assistant instructional designer. Ms. Braden Milam is the RCHSS ODE graduate assistant, and Ms. Lauren Schneider is the RCHSS ODE lead student assistant. Each of our presenters will introduce themselves when they come up to give their portions of the presentation. And I turn it over to Lauren, who is going to talk to us, and Julie, who will talk to us about the rationale for the project.
I'm Lauren Snyder, and I am the lead student assistant for the RCHSS ODE.
I'm Dr. Julie Newell, teaching faculty in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies.
In the United States, education is supported financially by a complicated combination of federal and state funding. States individually decide how much they want to contribute to the higher education in their state. Government funding has dropped substantially in recent decades. While numbers vary between states, overall funding per student dropped 27% from 2000 to 2014. Our own state of Georgia cuts funding 17%. Substantial cuts have to be made up at the institutional level. This means tuition increases, elimination of staff, and elimination of programs. Politicians push to cut funding to education, but also claim to keep taxes and other expenses low. The state rarely allows public institutions to raise tuition to make up these budget cuts. So funding opportunities are prized and competition for them is fierce. Funding is awarded for initiatives that increase student success and timely progress towards graduation. In order to compete for these highly prized student success dollars, our college wants to stand ready with research-based support to facilitate faculty implementation of techniques that foster student success. But just as there's a balancing act that goes with cutting state funding to higher education and also refusing to allow tuition prices to raise, there's also a balancing act with innovating to improve student success while also being mindful of innovations that might challenge academic freedom or increase already strained faculty workloads.
In response to this situation, which was made much more concrete to us by data indicating that instructors trained in the construction of online courses were not achieving significantly greater student success numbers, we considered why that might be happening and hypothesized that student success content was getting lost in the design emphasis and pressure to create a course, both because of faculty time constraints and conflicting demands, and within the last year or two, because of the rush to online course creation in response to pandemic issues. First of all, we wanted to emphasize research-based techniques to improve student success. Second, we needed to make these techniques available without significant time commitments from faculty for either additional training or implementation. And third, we needed to offer multiple options to allow faculty choice and appropriate choice, ability to choose different pedagogies for different situations. The solution we chose was to put more emphasis on these student success techniques by pulling them out in the Build a Web course instruction so that they had greater focus and faculty were more likely to remember them and include them in their design issues. These student success minute segments provide that focus and to try to understand what effect these more focused units were having. The first stage of this research was to collect data to better understand faculty intent to transfer the techniques to their courses and faculty perspectives on the various techniques themselves.
So hi everyone, my name is Brayden Milam. I am the Graduate Research Assistant at the Office of Digital Education. I'm going to be talking about Student Success Minute number 1, scaffolding. This is a concept introduced by Flower Darby in her book, Small Teaching Online. It essentially functions as a way to ensure students grasp core concepts or steps of the process before you move on to more complex concepts or steps. An example of this would be if you have a research paper that you expect students to submit at the very end of the semester. Throughout the semester, you might create smaller assignments. The first one might be submitting a topic for your approval. The second might be submitting a thesis statement or an argument. The third could be something like an annotated bibliography, and so on and so forth. This is beneficial to use particularly in online courses because you don't have the moments after class where your students can interact with you and ask you questions and clarification. It's also a very easy way to verify they're on track before they spend a really long time on an assignment that is then submitted and incorrect. And it's also a way to ensure that your assignments align with your course goals. And hopefully it cuts down on grading time. Scaffolding also integrates both student success and course development best practices. So in our faculty feedback, we found that a lot of them are most of them are familiar with the concept of scaffolding and have found it beneficial to have a term to use with this concept.
Hello, my name is Sam Lee. I am the Instructional Design Assistant with the Office of Digital Education, and I'm going to talk about the second Student Success Minute that we did, which was about GroupMe. So I did an Articulate Storyline 360 course. It's sort of similar to a PowerPoint or a slideshow, except it's a little bit more interactive and also can be viewed asynchronously and doesn't need someone to talk over it as PowerPoints often are. And this was about GroupMe. GroupMe is an online messaging website or app. Most students will use it in an app, and students will use GroupMe to create large group chats that they will then send the links to through their LMS. So in our case, they sent it through D2L by Brightspace. So there are two different conflicting strategies that faculty have in terms of what they should do about GroupMe. A lot of faculty like to fight it, but other faculty like to embrace it. So through this presentation, I gave some examples of why they would want to do each strategy and the pros and cons of each of them. So starting with the idea of fighting it, one recommendation is that a lot of faculty could put GroupMe in their syllabi and specifically say that students are not to use GroupMe. This doesn't really help with the fact that students are kind of inevitably going to want to create a GroupMe if they want to, but it does kind of let them know that the instructor does not want it and will make them less likely to do so. Another recommendation is that to fight it, the instructor could join the GroupMe under an alias, or they could also ask a colleague to join the GroupMe instead. My only recommendation for this is that the instructor have a fairly thick skin if they're going to be looking at all of the information that the students have to say about the instructor and about the course itself. And then my personal recommendation, and then one that we have a lot of information on in this presentation, is going to be the idea of embracing it. So for embracing it, it kind of just acknowledges the fact that it is inevitable that students are going to want to create a GroupMe for a course that they deem difficult enough to have a GroupMe in it. For this, I recommend that an instructor create the GroupMe themselves and send out the link to all of the students so that then the students won't make one themselves. Instead of GroupMe becoming a way for students to maybe cheat or talk about the course and the instructor, it instead becomes a way for them to have easy access to talk with the instructor whenever they need to. I also mentioned the fact that instructors should have boundaries put in place so that then they're not expected to respond to messages 24/7, as no instructor really wants to do that. But it can be a very easy way for students to easily contact their instructor. Lastly is the quiz and the reception of this course or this presentation. The quiz was fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Everyone who took it got a 100% on it. It was only 3 questions and had unlimited attempts, so it makes sense that everyone would get a 100%. In terms of the reception, about half of the instructors who viewed this presentation liked it, and the other half were not particularly fond of it. The same half who did like it said that they would implement it into their class, and the other half said that they would not, with one instructor specifically saying that they would opt instead to create a Slack group instead of a GroupMe in order to embrace the idea of a group chat for their entire course.
Student Success Minute number 3 covered OER, or Open Educational Resources, and the Creative Commons, which is a way to license your work and make it clear how you wish others to use it. If you'd like to see one of the exercises that was created for this module, you can see the tiny URL and type that into your browser window and visit some of the content that's in that module. In this strategy, Ms. Tiffany Reardon-Tiarina, Program Manager for Affordable Learning Georgia, explains what open educational resources are, why a professor might want to use them, and what Creative Commons licenses are. The Creative Commons licensing explanation is provided to support understanding of the types of resources that can be used with open educational resources. AffordableLearningGeorgia.org is the effort on the part of the state of Georgia to support faculty as they create free and low-cost materials for students. These are important. In the last 10 years, the average cost of college textbooks has risen 4 times faster than the rate of inflation. And 65% of students skip buying the required texts to save money, or simply because they cannot afford them. As an alternative to expensive textbooks, many faculty turn to OERs, and the research into OERs has shown that OERs increase student participation, satisfaction, learning, retention, and course and program completion. They reduce student debt not only by lowering textbook costs in individual classes, but also by allowing students to take more courses in a term, thereby graduating more quickly and accruing less student loan debt. Ms. Tiarina's Student Success Minute segment concludes with an ungraded self-assessment on the terms and concepts presented in the segment, and then a graded quiz on the same terms and concepts. Faculty participants were invited to practice with the ungraded self-assessment as much as desired before taking the graded quiz on the same information. Every faculty participant scored 100% on the graded quiz, which actually supports another student success element on ungraded self-assessment, and that will be the topic of a future Student Success Minute segment.
Hi, my name is Stephen Bartlett, and I am the Associate Director for the Office of Digital Education in the Radau College of Humanities and Social Sciences. I am here to present to you the Quick Write segment of the Student Success Initiative that we've been conducting in our office. The Quick Write was born out of an idea that's actually pretty old. It goes back to the 70s and 80s, a theory about that's called writing across the curriculum. This idea that students needed to be able to think more critically, to express themselves, and that the more writing they did outside of just English courses or literature courses, that the more writing, the better that they will be at accomplishing this. One of the aspects of that is an element called the Quick Write. And the Quick Write is really helpful in that the Quick Write is very short, and it's really good at being adapted to an online environment. So with online, we're talking about ways that we can engage the students, keep them interested, and yet we don't want to work a lot harder. We want to work smarter. And so the Quick Write allows us to achieve this with the students. The idea is very simple. You give a prompt that you would have at the end of maybe a weekly module, and that prompt should be something that's reflective, that allows the student to deepen their critical thinking abilities, and also allows you to get some instant feedback. So maybe you choose something like, what was your favorite fact that you learned from the week? Or How do you think you could apply this theory to something in your daily life? Or how do you think that that something that's going on in the world today may apply to what we've just studied? This again gives some agency to the students. They get to express their opinions. You want them to do it very quickly, so give them a limit, maybe 3 sentences that they're allowed to write it. This also gives them that ability to hone in on how to summarize very quickly. You're not going to grade this in great detail. They're just going to drop it in a Dropbox. You would go in very quickly and check through just to make sure that they've done it. But what it gives you is that instant feedback for the course. The quick write is one of the easiest ways of engaging with the students and encouraging them to reflect upon what they've learned for the week. Now, when we talked about this with the faculty in our study, the result has been fairly positive. It was usually on the sliding scale was in the 3 to 4s range, so the higher end of the scale. And we had one faculty member who did write us back to say that they were definitely going to be employing this in their classes. It may be something that you're thinking, we already knew this because it has been around for a long time, but it gets kind of lost maybe. We forget that we can apply this to the online environment. And actually it works really, really well in the online environment. So we also have, as another element within our study, a module that dealt with the organizing of the class into weekly modules. Now, this may seem the most basic of ideas, and it really is a basic idea, but oftentimes design, we forget or we over-design the course, and we don't realize that students need something which they can scaffold their time. Repeatedly, when we look at survey results of students and talk to students about what they found the most difficult aspect of online courses, they continually tell us that time management is a problem. Well, organizing the weekly modules or organizing your course into weekly modules gives them a framework to build upon. So you don't want to just let them loose in the course and have them run through the course because they can easily get behind. So the other aspect that a lot of students have problems with, and faculty don't mean to do this, but they just do it unintentionally, is they may think that their organization is helping the students by putting all videos in one folder or all of the reading in one folder and another, all the assignments in another one. What that actually creates is something we like to call the great hunt, where the students are constantly trying to look through the entire course and figure out, did I get to this one? Did I find this one? Did I find this? If everything is organized into a weekly module and they know within that week, all they have to do is click in that folder and they will see, this is the reading, this is the video, this is everything that's right there for them. It's going to be really helpful in keeping students on track. It seems like a really obvious answer, but it's one that often escapes us as we're designing a course. This is going to be the one aspect or one of the aspects of our study that most of the faculty said we're definitely doing. And again, it seems like the most obvious. It's also the easiest, but it will produce probably some of the greatest results in terms of student success for those faculty members.
For the 6th Student Success Minute, I made a soft talk presentation about giving timely and effective feedback. So starting with what soft talk is a presentation software that's kind of similar to Articulate Storyline 360 in that it's pretty interactive and is used asynchronously, but it works as more of a web page than a slideshow. Most of the presentation that I created revolved around information from Small Teaching Online by Flower Darby and James M. Lang, with a lot of it revolving around the theory and then the models of effective feedback and timely feedback. So for the theory, I started with describing the purpose of the feedback, one of them being to explain a grade to the students and justify why a grade was given to them for a specific assignment or assessment, which would be more of a summative assessment. And I also mentioned that feedback should have instructions for improvement which would be more of a formative assessment. I also mentioned the ideas of giving almost immediate feedback versus giving delayed feedback, in that immediate feedback is, or almost immediate feedback would be best for lower stakes assessments so students can know how they need to improve before the next assignment or assessment. And delayed feedback is better for higher stakes assignments, so then they can have time to soak in the material and understand why they're getting the feedback that they're getting. I also mentioned my models for timely and effective feedback. For timely feedback being that the instructor doesn't need to be available 24/7, and that they should structure deadlines around their own schedule, having the idea in their mind that students are most likely to reach out for help when it gets closer to a due date. So instructors should plan to be more available closer to a due date in order to give feedback to their students directly or meet with them one-on-one. I also mentioned for effective feedback that using technology to your advantage is definitely a good idea, particularly for online classes. We use D2L Brightspace as our learning management system. And through there, you can create rubrics within D2L. And I recommended that they put the feedback within the rubrics. So they don't have to copy and paste the same feedback or rewrite it over and over for the same assignment for multiple different students. At the end, we had a quiz that proved to be a little bit more difficult than expected, with faculty getting an average of 75% on the quiz in the first group of faculty that we gave this to. But for the second group of faculty that we gave this to, we created a practice quiz that they took before they went into the soft talk presentation. And once they had the practice quiz, they did much better on the quiz that occurred afterwards, all getting 100%. In terms of reception, 2 faculty members said that this was the most helpful of all the student success minutes. And over half of the faculty members who viewed this said that they would implement it into their classes.
The summaries of each segment show that faculty participants did engage with the materials. We have only begun to receive feedback from faculty who have completed the Student Success Minute training. 4 faculty members have completed the survey regarding their intent to transfer. All respondents confirmed that they will implement at least one strategy with emphasis on GroupMe, weekly modules, and feedback. We asked if these segments should be included in future trainings, and 3 of the respondents answered yes, along with additional positive feedback. Even faculty with prior training found the modules to be very useful.
Our next steps in the research project are: first, creation of additional Student Success Minute modules. 3 are planned at present, 1 on ungraded assignments, 1 on engaging discussions, and 1 on scaffolding for successful group assignments. Next, we will create access to these modules outside the Build a Web course process. First of all, for previous participants in the Build a Web course workshop, and secondarily, across and beyond our institution to faculty outside that training. We intend to continue to collect faculty feedback and expand to follow up on actual transfer of techniques into courses, not just intent. And once that happens, to gather data on student perceptions in instances where techniques have been implemented.
Thank you so much for watching our presentation. We invite you to come along on our Student Success Initiative project. If you would like to do so, please use the tiny URL listed on the presentation slide behind me, or use the QR code. You can scan it with your phone or mobile device. If you would like to contribute to this project, you can follow the survey at the very end. That will be for feedback on the Student Success Minutes. Thank you so much. We welcome all feedback and advice.